I chose Spelman because I grew up in a neighborhood in Detroit that was multicultural, but it was predominantly Jewish. And my parents met at Tuskegee. My dad was a pilot. They're now called Tuskegee Airmen. But back in World War II, he was a fighter pilot. And my mom was a student at Tuskegee. And they always tell the story of how they were at this basketball game. And my dad looked at my mom and I guess he figured, this is my heart forever. So I always decided that the historically black university would be my choice. My parents, like I said, they met at Tuskegee, but I was born and raised in Detroit, and I didn't see the community that Tuskegee is located in as a place that I would want to spend 4 years. Spelman was in Atlanta, and that was a big city. That's where I wanted to go. I heard nothing but good things about Spelman. My mother had a really good friend who was a Spelman graduate, and she said nothing but good things about Spelman. It just so happened that the Spelman Morehouse Glee Club was performing in Detroit just before I made my decision at a church. So we did go to that concert, my mother and my sister and I. And I said Spelman all the way. They got Morehouse across the street, so it's not really it's an all-girls school, but it's not it's in a campus where I will be around males and females. So it was Spelman all the way.
Now, what year was that when you started Spelman?
I started in 1965.
How did your parents feel about letting you had obviously some family members who or friends that you knew in Atlanta, but how did they feel sending their daughter from Michigan to Georgia, kind of far away from them in that day and age?
Yes, it was at the height of the civil rights movement. We would see on the 6 o'clock news the hosing of African Americans and just the brutal violence. But I think my parents knew that Spelman guarded its students very well. When I was at Spelman, I don't know if they still do it, but we signed in when we left the dorm, except, of course, not during class time. But we signed out. The dorm mother sat right there beside that book. We signed back in. We had a very strict curfew. And my parents knew that we were well guarded at Spelman. And we were.
It's probably that way now, just with drones and who knows what technology in the future. Now, what dorm did you stay in at Spelman, and what was dorm life like?
My freshman year, I was in Packard Hall. The cafeteria was on the first floor of Packard.
Wow.
The post office was on the ground level of Packard. So everything was convenient. It was an older dorm, but we got used to it. My roommate, who remained my roommate for 4 years, and she was from Miami, and we just clicked off right away. Everybody at Packard, even though it was one of the larger dorms, we all got along. And my sophomore year, I was at Abbey, which we thought was really new and fancy then. We didn't have the cafeteria, we didn't have the post office, but we thought it was really fancy and cute. Looked like a little colonial house.
It is a beautiful building.
And then I was in, I can't remember what it's called now. We called it the new dorm. But
is it a high rise?
No, it's not.
So, I mean, it's not HH.
No, it was, I'm sorry, but it's when you pull up the driveway from the parking lot.
So it's not Morehouse James?
No, Morehouse James was right next to Abbey, I think.
Wait, it's not the one that burned down later. Campbell, I know there was a dorm before Howard Harold.
No, that was Chadwick.
Chadwick, that's what I'm thinking, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't remember that, but we called it the new dorm. But there have been many, many new buildings since 1969.
That's fantastic, though, that would
Yeah.
have been the new dorm. Because, but also, I have to tell, I stayed in HH, but all of my close friends lived in Abbey, and I did think Abbey was like, oh, okay, that's good. That's really elegant. Um, did you all have anything like your convocations? You had to go every day, or what was convocation like at Spelman in between 65 and 69?
We had 3 days: Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we had seats, so that way they knew we were there because they had monitors, students, seniors, who walked down the aisle, and they knew if you weren't in your seat, and you got demerits if you missed. It was 8 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you'd be surprised if you knew how many girls ran down to we called it chapel, with raincoats over their pajamas, with their pajama pants rolled up, because it was so early. But we also had Sunday vespers in the evening.
But that's also you're expected to be there. Your
Oh,
seat is
yes,
assigned. Okay.
yes, we had to be at vespers. My class was called, class of '69 was called the Rebels, because we felt that we shouldn't have to go to that much chapel and vespers, and we did protest. And our parents got letters, people who protested.
And did the protest win your argument or no?
It did. It did. They cut back to 2 days, and we still had vespers.
But that's a really interesting time because so much turmoil is going on around campus, but you all found a way to politely voice what you needed to have happen.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, that's kind of phenomenal, which leads me actually to one of my questions about Dr. King.
Yes.
You were on campus when
Yes.
Spelman hosted his body because Morehouse obviously didn't have the capacity at the time. King's Chapel did.
Exactly.
What year were you a junior?
I was a junior. It was 1968. And I can remember like it was yesterday. A friend of mine and I were driving downtown, and we heard on the news that Dr. Martin Luther King had been shot. It was devastating. It really was devastating because he had just given the I Have a Dream. No, I'm sorry, not I Have a Dream, but he did give the address at one of the churches in Memphis, and he said, "I will not be with you, but I will see the mount. You'll see the mountaintop," exactly like Moses. The next evening, he was shot. He passed away. And they did keep his body at Spelman and Sisters Chapel. And I can still remember we would watch out of our dorm windows, and for the whole weekend, he was laid in repast. It must have been a Friday, but that whole weekend from sun up to sundown, the chapel was open. The line never stopped. The line never stopped all the way down to the gate. And people were brought up in limousines because these were some people dignitaries from other countries. And of course, dignitaries, community leaders, every person walk of life came, I really believe, to see him laid to rest. The morning of his funeral, they did, and I knew the person whose buckboard the casket was laid on. His father owned the buckboard, and it went down, was called Fair Street at that time. I think it's now Martin Luther King. We stood just like it was a parade on each side of the sidewalk as the buckboard was driven to the church.
And was it just silence?
It was silence. It was silence, and just like this great dignitary that we respected and admired was passing by.
Well, we do have a lot of amazing Morehouse brothers, but probably none who will have the same historical impact of Dr. King. So for you to have been there.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, you are semi-retired because I know you're still doing tutoring. I mean, I looked on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm doing sort of It's sort of consulting. I work with two companies, Pearson and Measurement Incorporated, just on temporary projects, basically evaluating essays, SATs, and scoring.
But your career has been as an educator, and so now this is still kind of helping students with academics. How do you feel Spelman prepared you for the life you led and lead now?
Spelman played a very important, I had very strong parents, but it wasn't until I went to Spelman where the teachers were so compassionate. I went to a high school where my graduating class was over 1,000, the highest class in the history of Cass Technical High School in Detroit. And the percentage of African Americans was about 13-17%. But to be around the number of strong black women who cared about you, our professors, and there were Caucasian male professors as well, but to have that many caring black women in the education setting was amazing. I can't think of a better way to build your self-esteem, to feel empowered for your creativity. Those teachers did not let you slack. We were monitored. They cared about your living up to excellence. So all of that was positive for me. And I probably 90% of my class went on to graduate school right away, and that was unusual in 1969. My roommate, but there was still a lot of discrimination. My roommate was a biology and chemistry major and minor. Brilliant, wonderful young lady. She applied at different medical schools, and it was legal for them to tell her, we have our quota of black students. So she was turned down a lot, even though it wasn't because she didn't merit enrollment, but because the medical schools were discriminating, and it was not unlawful. She did end up going to Harry, and she went to Howard later on and got her pharmacy degree. So I think our class really did some state-of-the-art, new, innovative things in education because of Spelman.
And probably because as young ladies, you were there at a pivotal time. When I was starting Spelman, there were several older women who said, oh, you're going to get your MRS degree. And my mother said, I'm not sending her to school to get married.
Right.
But in the 60s, that would be a great thing for a woman to have happen, even though your education is really what your parents are sending you to do. And Spelman kind of were expected to do it all. But my last question to you is, you are our chapter chaplain. I call us SpeLA. Because NAASC sometimes is long for me, so I'm like SpeLA.
Yeah.
But you're our chapter chaplain. Why did you choose to support Spelman by becoming a member of NAASC?
When I moved from Michigan, I retired, I sold my house, and my daughter, my only child, had been in California for about 7 or 8 years. As soon as she graduated from the University of Michigan, she got her degree in communications and film. So of course she came straight out to LA, and I called her and we were talking, and she said, Mom, I'm not coming back to Michigan. And we were seeing each other maybe 3 or 4 times a year. After I retired, like I said, I sold my house and I moved out. My friends in Michigan were calling me crazy. Why would you go way out there? Your family is here, your friends are here, this is your community. How are you going to make friends in California? I said, well, I'll join the Spelman alumni group. I will find a good church and I will make friends. And that's exactly what I did. I am so glad and so proud of the National Alumni Association, Spelman College, Los Angeles chapter. I was embraced by the young women, and I'm really proud that our chapter is diverse in age, because I talked to some of my friends around the country who feel like, oh, well, the younger women are, taking over. But it's not like that in Los Angeles. We have a diverse age group, and that is why I decided to join the Los Angeles alumni chapter. And really, I've always gone to church, and there was a lady, I had belonged to an organization in Detroit. It was the Tuskegee Airmen's Wives Auxiliary. I wasn't a wife, I was a daughter, but my mother passed away a couple of years before I moved, so they asked me to come and take her membership. And there was a lady who, before every meeting, gave a reflection or meditation. I thought it was really sweet. So during my first election out here, someone asked me to be the recording secretary. And at that time, I was living about 30 miles outside of Los Angeles. And I said, well, I'm not sure yet that I'm going to make every meeting, but I wouldn't mind doing a reflection or a meditation, reading something before the meeting. And they said, well, that's the chaplain's office. We need a chaplain. So that's how I became chaplain, and I've enjoyed it.
Well, I have to say, you do at least start our meetings in a meaningful moment, and I've loved ending our meetings with our hymn. But I want to thank you so much, because it's been hard for me not to interrupt you, because the things you've said are so exciting. First of all, 1,000 students in your high school, Martin Luther King, but the fact that you picked up and left Michigan and were like, I'm coming to California, and your family, and you're like, but my family is here, my granddaughter. Okay, so this is a bonus question I didn't have. Would you like for your granddaughter, you have a granddaughter,
Yes.
Would you like for her to attend Spelman?
I would love for her to attend Spelman. I wanted my daughter to attend Spelman, but we lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the University of Michigan. It's really hard when a person goes to high school and they're surrounded on Saturdays with the big football games, and hopefully she didn't go to the frat parties, but I wouldn't be surprised if she hadn't. So it's just really hard to, and I had brought her up around Spelman. She knew all of the reunions. She knew all of my classmates, but she decided, no, I'm staying here. I'm going to the University of Michigan, but I would love for my granddaughter to go to Spelman and join the Granddaughters Club.
Well, then we hope that your granddaughter will come to one of our events, maybe even the send-off to say goodbye for our students that we're having in July,
Yeah.
and we can just start easing her into it.
Oh, of course.
Thank you so much. I'm going to
Thank
shut
you,
this off
Erica.
now. I appreciate it.